This is how you make beautiful reports without becoming a data analyst yourself or waiting for others to make it for you. You don't have 3 extra hours per week to turn those numbers into a clean looking report for your boss, or you have to wait several days for your ops team to get back to you. Exporting your data, cleaning it up, adding charts, and formatting is a whole separate job. So here's what can happen instead. Once a week, a report is going to be automatically created without you ever touching HubSpot, Excel, or other spreadsheets or tools. Now, this won't be another tool you have to sign up for, and it's not Zapier, NAN, Power BI, or Tableau. Everything runs inside one app, and you probably already have it. It's Claude. After this video, you'll know how to automatically create useful, not just pretty, reports that tells a story anyone can easily understand. This video is how you set up once and never create those reports again yourself. So here's what's happening behind the scenes. Claude directly connects to your CRM, pulls your numbers, and builds the whole thing on a schedule based on a set of instructions that you give in plain English. So there's no copy-paste, repeating instructions, or coding. If you want a full breakdown of how it all works, that video is right here. Hey there, my name is Yuji. I spent years in data analytics and machine learning. I was a senior engineering lead, and I've made the kind of reports executives made decisions on. Now I help teams use AI the right way, minus the hype. What I'm going to show you today is going to help you become data-driven without being a data analyst like I was. Each report is for a different role with a set of goals and metrics unique to that role. The first one is for a sales rep that summarizes individual performance, and the second one is for managers that want to roll up team performance metrics. And lastly, if you're an exec, this is going to help you see the company's overall performance. So choose whatever fits your role the closest and jump right into that section. If you're a sales rep and you have an upcoming weekly one-on-one with your manager, this report is going to help you prepare for the conversation. With this report, you can discuss with your manager what deals are at risk, what kind of support you need, whether your progress is going to hit the quota, whether you're getting enough deals coming into the pipeline, or whether you should work on the conversion from each stage. At the top of the report, we have an executive summary where on the left column, we have the achievements for this week and what to focus on for the next week. Our first North Star metric is the quota attainment for this quarter, and it shows that my weekly quota has been met, but my actual was actually way above 20K, which was 27, so about 33% above target. I have 3 deals that were closed on an average of 16,000 per deal, compared to last week has been lower than 23%, and projected close at pace, we have 320K. Then we have a pipeline health that shows deals by stage here. Majority of it is in the discovery phase, and each chart here shows the number of deals as well as the total projected amount and comparing to last week. Then we have the stage conversion, shows about 77% go from prospecting to discovery, and then about 65% from discovery to demo, and so on. Here we have the total activity this week. Of the 22 scheduled calls, we have 14 connected, which is about 64% connect rate, which is about 28% lower than it was last week. That just gives you a general idea of how many emails and meetings that were booked compared to the past week. Then we have the win rate, currently sits at about 67%, higher than last week. And it compares the total amount of the won deals compared to last week. Here we have a summary of stalled deals. It shows you what are at risk. And lastly, a quick summary of the calls this week gives you a general idea of what happened in that call, what type of the call it was, and whether the deal moved to a different stage within 48 hours. If you're managing a sales team, here's a report for you to share with your VP or to prepare for your weekly one-on-ones. At the top, we have a executive summary here. We have the wins this week as well as what to focus on the next week. And we have a team pipeline by stage. So it shows the total number of deals by stage and the total value of it and comparing it to the previous week. Right below it, we have the conversion rate. So this says that about 81% converts from prospecting to discovery and about 73% from discovery to demo, and so on. You can also see the pipeline by rep to see who needs more support and compare their performance from the previous week. You also have the rep leaderboard where you can see the win rate across your reps. Then you have a summary of at-risk deals that shows you deals that have been overdue and at which stage they're at currently and who owns it. Then we have the quota here by monthly and quarterly. You can see which rep is in progress to meet their goals versus not. And we have the coverage and see how it compares to the remaining quota. And lastly, we have the sales cycle and the average time in each stage. If you're an executive, this report gives you the bigger picture to help you understand your operations in a few seconds. At the top, we have an executive summary, a list of wins this week, and a list of what to focus on in the coming week. Then we have the year-to-date revenue versus bookings, whether it's meeting the quota, and what the projected year-end would be. Then we have the pipeline coverage. And at the bottom, we have the portfolio health showing what the conversion rate is, the average deal size, and average sales cycle. And at the bottom, we have a few deals that are flagged. I'm going to show you how you set up in 2 ways. The first one is going to be Fast Track. All 3 reports you saw are downloadable for free from my GitHub repo, which I will link in the description. In the Fast Track setup, I'm going to show you how you download from my GitHub repo, set it up as a skill in Claude Cowork, and start using it. Go to Fast Track method if you want to see what the report looks like and want to make minimum changes. In the second setup, you're going to learn how to create from scratch and how to make it truly yours. And once you learn this, you can create any report with any goals, any metrics, and any data source that you have. This is the GitHub repo that you will go to called Cowork Weekly Report. And there is a folder called Fast Track. So that's what you want to click on. And here I have 3 persona. The first one is for a sales rep. Second one is for a sales manager. Third one is if you're an exec and you are dealing with SaaS products. The fourth one is also for an exec, but if you're dealing with physical goods. For the setup, I'll just click on the first one. This is the same skill that I used to create the report that you saw earlier in my videos. So you can see that there are North Star metrics that match up with the report. We have the accessory metrics here, which basically explain what's happening to North Star metrics. We have the metrics here with what type of charts that it's using. And here's a mapping of the metrics and the source that it's using. Here we have details about how we want the report to look like. And we have fallback rules in case certain data doesn't exist. These are details that Claude should follow. So that's a general structure of this report making skill that we have. So now we're going to bring this to Cowork and make it into a skill. So what we're going to do is simply copy this whole skill by clicking this button. We're going to open Claude app and going to skills and click on the skill creator. If you don't have a skill creator yet, click the plus button. Under skills, there is browse skills. And here you can type skill creator. And there should be a button that says install. So you just click install. Once you've installed, you should be able to see it under your skills. Now, what Skill Creator does is that it's going to take our instructions and the copied file and turn it into a saved skill that you can access through clicking the plus skills button again. So these are some of the skills that I've either saved or created myself. Okay, I'm going to give it a short prompt, basically instructing Cowork to create a skill based off the text that I paste here. I'm going to paste some text here. I want you to turn it into a skill called Weekly Report. Once you save it as a skill, then I want you to create a report for me. Now we're going to paste the skill here. Before you hit that send button, make sure that you have all the connectors that Claude needs to pull all the data that you need to make the report. If you're unsure how to connect to these apps, I'm going to link the video up here, and I'm also going to paste a link inside the description. Once you hit send, it'll take a few minutes to set it up, and it'll give you a save button that you can manually click to save it as a skill. Here you can see how Cowork is working. So it first finds all the data that it needs, then starts building the report in the HTML format. What that just means is that it's going to make it into a report where it has nice design like this, and you can actually share with other people. And it's going to ensure that it's following the visual guide that's specified in the skill that we just pasted. Once it's finished building the report, you'll be able to see it within the Claude app, or you can choose to open it in your browser and share it with others. So that was a fast track. If you want to learn how to tweak it, like add more metrics or change the design, check out this video. I'll also link it in the description below. Now we're going to learn how to create the report making skill from scratch. In this section, we're going to learn how to think when building a report. So you can do it for any goal, at any company, and with whatever tools you may have in the future. First, we need to clarify what sort of decision this report is going to help us enable. If you're a sales rep, your main goal is to close more deals. To achieve that goal, you might have to make several decisions, such as increasing the number of deals coming into the pipeline, or focusing on moving the deals into the next stage, increasing conversion. You're essentially becoming a data-driven person once you use the data report to understand where you need to shift your focus. In the first step, write down all the questions you may have to understand whether you're on track to meet your goal. Now we're going to work backwards. Notice how we didn't just start off with writing all the metrics that's in your head. Now we're going to pick our North Star metrics. Each of the North Star metric is going to answer each of your questions directly. While those metrics may simply answer your questions yes or no, you may not understand what's happening underneath. If the metric is doing good, what made it good? And if the metric did bad, What can we improve to make it better? These are what accessory metrics answer. They help us understand the why. So in step 2, write out all your North Star metrics and a few accessory metrics to go along with it. In step 3, we're going to map the data source to each of those metrics. And don't just limit yourself to your typical CRM like HubSpot. Data sources like Fireflies, Fathom, your calendar, OneDrive, or Google Drive, where you store all your documents, can also be good data sources. In step 4, we're going to think how we want our report to look like. You could prefer a modern, sleek, simple look, or it could be a very detailed dashboard style. In step 5, we're going to bring all of these together and put it into one document. With this document, we're going to make our skill. A skill is essentially a structured format of detailed instructions that we feed to Claude so that it can follow through every single time without missing any of the details you want. And in our last step, we're going to see what the report looks like and make small adjustments until we're happy with the report. So let's go through an example of a sales rep to see what the process looks like. Say I'm a sales rep and I want to close more deals. In order to do that, I need to understand a few questions. One of them is, am I even getting enough deals in the process? At what point do most deals fail? Is there enough follow-ups for each stage of the deal? For each of those questions, I would have a good reason why I want to ask that question. So in this case, I want to know if I'm getting enough deals, because if it's not enough, then I would need to work on getting more deals. And if it is enough, perhaps there's something happening during the process. And once I understand what's happening with this, then I can decide where I should focus on, whether it's getting more deals or fix the process. Same with the other questions. I know exactly why I'm asking those questions and how knowing the answers to those questions is going to help me unlock the next steps. For each of the North Star metric, we're going to write a few accessory metrics. So in this case, for the question, am I even getting enough deals in the process? My North Star is going to be the total number of deals opened this week. And to help me understand why this is high or low, my accessory metrics are going to be the number of deals by source and number of qualified leads per week. I'm also going to specify the cadence of the metrics. So in my case, I will want to know how I did this week compared to last week. So I'm going to add weekly. I also want to know if I'm meeting my quarterly goals. So I'm going to add quarterly as well. One trick for the step is not to limit yourself in one data source. So don't just think, oh, I have to get all these metrics in whatever I can get in HubSpot only. You can always be creative with where you get the data. So when you're writing down these metrics, don't limit yourself. Here are some other possible data sources you may have. Your email, whether that's Gmail or Outlook, could be a good source that HubSpot may miss. Fireflies, Fathom, or whatever transcription tools you have can be a really good source as well, as they contain all the details of that call. And it can give you some tips of how you can improve your calls next time. So go ahead, write out your North Star metrics and accessory metrics and specify the cadence. In the next step, we're going to specify where we can find the data source for each of the metrics. It's very important that you detail where you can find the data within each of the data source instead of just listing it out so that Claude knows exactly where to look at. When you write down these data sources, think, if I were to get this number myself, I would check here from this data source. So in this example, to get the total number of deals opened this week, if I were to check it, I would go to HubSpot, I would check the deal board, and I would count the number of deals there and make sure that all those deals opened this week. Just like a person, the more detail that you give where to find these data, Claude is going to do a much better job for you. Now you get to be more creative with the next step. You can choose the look of your report. So what I do is I Google some data reports to see what kind of style I like. And here are some styles that I think look really great. For example, this one looks really clean, not messy. And so is this one. I love the use of color, how interactive this is, and how simple and intuitive this report is. What I do is I would take screenshots of different charts, different way of representing the data, and I feed it to Claude Chat. And I ask, what kind of style is this? And what kind of language or words should I use to describe the design? Knowing how to describe the design of the report that you want is going to be really important in the next step, so that Claude knows exactly what you want. We are now ready to create our own custom report making skill. The next few steps are going to include connecting all your data source to your Claude. If you're not sure how to do this, I've already made a video about this, so check out this video or check the link in the description below. Then we're going to create your weekly report skill. Now there's 2 sub-steps to this. First, we're going to use Claude Chat to create the custom weekly report skill.md. This is the text file containing your instructions. Once we have this file, we're going to paste it into Claude Cowork to create and save the skill. There's a reason why we do this in 2 steps. We first use Chat because it does a great job drafting your instructions, and it's more conversational and more beginner-friendly. It also builds much faster than building from scratch with Claude Cowork. Then we use Cowork because it does a great job validating your instructions by conducting tests. This is where you tweak or give additional information so that Claude has everything it needs to build it as a skill. To make it easier for you, I've already created a template for you to fill in with your metrics. So under Cowork Weekly Report, there is a fill-in template details prompt.md. And here you can see the template. So this is where you write your goal, the questions you need to understand, how this enables some of the decisions you can make, North Star metric, accessory metrics, cadence, and where to find that data. Copy this template by clicking this button. I find it easy to just work in a document like this and just fill in the information. Notice how above my details, we have the instruction for chat to help us come up with a skill.md. In the first instruction, we ask Claude to confirm the data sources. So Claude will ensure that we have all the data sources connected to Claude app. Then for each of the North Star metrics, we ask Claude to ensure that we have a cadence and whether we could use any other cool data sources that can help us supplement the report. We also ask Claude to ask us if the fallback scenario is genuinely ambiguous. What this means is that if you don't have a data that exists in that data source, say this week you just didn't have the data for a certain metric, what should Claude do? What if you just create a HubSpot account and you don't have all the past quarter data, right? In this case, Claude would usually put like a horizontal line or some way to indicate that the data just lacked for this week. However, for other cases where it's genuinely ambiguous, it'll ask you what to do. We also ask Claude to verify the visual guide that we have. So remember the part where we were using Claude Chat to come up with that language, those words to describe the style that we wanted. This is the part that ensures that it makes sense. So the structure of the prompt for the Claude Chat is going to be that we have our instructions here. Then we have our details with the metrics. Now, the first line of the instructions, we say that we have these details and they need to fill it into the attached weekly report.md as a skill template. Feel free to remove that first line and copy the rest, paste it into the chat to create a skill.md completely from scratch. You can choose to download the skill.md template that I already have for you if you want a report that looks exactly the same as the one that I showed you earlier in my video. So once you have all these details filled in, copy the whole prompt here and paste right into Claude Chat. Open up your Claude app and we're going to directly paste it into the chat. Make sure that it's toggled to chat, not cowork. Pretend that I already have my details filled in here. So the structure of the prompt that we're going to feed into Claude Chat is that we have the instructions here. Then you have your details with the metrics. Along with this prompt, we're going to attach a file. To do that, go back to my repository and click on weekly report skill template.md. You can see that under the goal, North Star metrics and accessory metrics and data sources, they're still empty so that you can use it as your own report. What this skill.md template has for you is that it has a visual guideline that I've already created for my video. But of course, feel free to adjust it as you want. Maybe you don't want it dark mode. Maybe you want it light mode. Those are easy enough changes that you can make from this template. We're going to download this file, click the download raw file, and we're going to attach it to the Claude Chat. Okay, I just loaded the template here. So what Claude Chat is going to do now is it's going to read these instructions and it's going to fill in those areas that were empty, such as metrics and data sources, based off the details that you've given here. I want to highlight that this will be a very important step where Claude will ask you anything that's unclear. And it is expected that there is a back and forth between you and Claude to ensure that Claude has all the details that it needs to create an instruction that is as clear as possible. By going through these conversations and you giving the feedback to Claude, you're ensuring that your report is going to look like what you expected. I highly recommend you use a smart model that is at least Sonnet 4.6 or an Opus because those models are better at planning and are better at reasoning. So here's my chat. You can see that I've pasted the prompt here with my details. And Claude read it through and had some questions for me. It asked me whether I save the quota inside HubSpot or if I should tell it manually. It also asked if all the calls are synced to HubSpot so it knows when I had meetings. Then it gave me some suggestions of other data sources that I could use to supplement the report. And it gave it a quick summary of how I would design the report and the fallback rules that it would follow in case data isn't available. For the fallback rules, it asked me if the quota is missing, if it should just go ahead without the quota metrics, or if it should always ask me before producing the report. So right below it, I answered those questions. And then it generated the final skill.md for me. So here you can see that there is a document that you can click on. Feel free to keep going if you want to make more adjustments. Once you're happy, then you copy the skill over. Quickly recapping what we did so far, we asked Claude Chat to come up with a draft skill.md. This text file is going to be used to create a skill that you can reuse over and over again. Now, you either chose option A or option B. Option A is you remove that first line in the prompt that I provided to you. So it asks Claude to come up with a draft skill completely from scratch. Now, if you went with this method, you might have had a little bit more back and forth with Claude Chat to make sure that you design a report that you would want, whether that's tweaking the designs or providing additional rules. If you went with option B, you went to my GitHub repo and copied my skill.md template, which already gives you the design guidelines, so you don't have to have that additional back and forth with Claude. But you would have to still fill in your details with the metrics, cadence, and the data sources. Whether you went with option A or B, by now you should have a skill.md drafted by Claude Chat. We're going to copy this file and move over to Claude Cowork so we can save it as a skill. In Claude Cowork, our prompt is going to look something like this. I'm going to attach a markdown file that I want you to turn into a skill called weekly report, or whichever you'd like to call it. Please review it, clarify anything, and run the eval loop. So this is the part where Claude Cowork is going to conduct multiple tests and validate your skill. I would also add this part so that we can see the generated report and give feedback on the visuals. We're going back to Claude app, but this time we're going to work in Claude Cowork. So make sure this is switched to Cowork here. And now we're going to paste the prompt, same prompt that we just saw. And we're going to attach our drafted skill.md here. And then you're going to hit send. So this is my skill creation inside Claude Cowork. And after I gave the drafted skill.md, Claude Cowork went through it and had a few questions. And here you can see that it created its own tasks to start creating it as a skill and then conduct some tests. So you can see on the top right corner, these are the tests that it conducted: validating data source, computing all the metrics, building a HTML report, and etc. So once it builds the report, it's going to ask you if it can save it as an artifact. An artifact is going to be a more interactable version of the report. You can choose to save it. You don't have to. If you do save it, you're going to see it saved on your menu with this icon so that you can easily access it. Here's the report. You can go through them. And if you'd like to make any changes, you can ask it to update the skill right here in the Cowork. You can also choose to update the skill.md that you came up with in the chat instead and open a new Cowork session and create the report that way too. Once you're happy with the report, ask it to save it as a skill, and it's going to prompt you to save it as a skill here. So you can save this button, and you should be able to see it under the plus skill, and you'll see there is weekly report here. Now that we have a report making skill, we're going to learn how to schedule that skill so it can run automatically without you even triggering it. We're going back to our Claude app, and under the menu, you'll see scheduled. Once you click that, you'll see this interface. And now we'll click on new task and click setup manually. We're going to name it weekly report generation, but feel free to name as you want. And in the prompt, I'm going to type something like this. So we say, run the weekly report skill using the live connectors. And here we want two files. One is the HTML and two is the PDF version of it. The reason for this is that PDF, it's super easy to download it, share with people through Slack, Drive, whatever. The HTML file is because we can save this in this website called Netlify. And instead of sharing the file, we can share a link that hosts our report. So when someone visits this website, they can see the report without sacrificing the quality or the look of the report. There's currently a lot of issues with sharing the artifact in Claude. One reason is that there's a limit to how much Claude can push to your Drive or Slack. And when it pushes it, it tends to lower the quality of it so that it can send it. This means that when you see your report on your end, it looks beautiful, crisp, clean, nice. But when someone else receives it, it looks fuzzy, it's not as crisp. And sometimes Claude converts back to being a really bare bones look instead of the design that you had. So for that reason, I don't recommend it to schedule it so that you generate and share it at the same time. Now, if your teammate also has Claude and you guys are both on the same team with a Claude team plan, there is a way to share artifacts. The artifact that I mentioned before, if you save it, there's a link that Claude provides and you can share that link. However, there's a caveat to this. Claude doesn't always generate a link for you. I noticed that sometimes when you generate an artifact through chat, you have it, but when you generate through Cowork, you may not have it. So this whole sharing the report becomes super complicated. And I think the most straightforward way to share it while preserving the quality and the look of your report is to just share the PDF yourself or push your HTML code to this website called Netlify, which I will go over in a bit. And people can just visit your website instead. So back to setting this scheduled task. Once you have your prompt in there, you can choose your frequency. In our case, we're going to do weekly on, say, Friday at, let's say, lunchtime. And you save it. Once you save it, you'll see a card that's generated in the scheduled task. So you can visit it anytime if you want to edit it, edit your prompt, or pause it. If you click on it, there's also a toggle button, which you can just easily toggle off. You can also test out to see what it looks like by clicking on the Run Now button. Now we've created a skill to automatically generate our report, and we've set up the schedule task so it automatically generates every week without you ever touching it. Now I'm going to go over a little about the sharing of the report. Originally, I intended this video to be generating and sharing the report automatically. However, there's a few issues with this inside Claude. I mentioned before that any reports or big files, Claude is going to struggle pushing that over to Google Drive, OneDrive, email, or Slack. And this is because there's a limit to the size of the file that it can push. So when you push it, you'll see a very fuzzy, low quality report, which is something that you don't want. The most straightforward way is for you to manually download as a PDF and share it wherever you want, whether that's through Slack or saving in Google Drive to share it with your teammates. However, if you're intending to share it with someone who doesn't have access to your Google Drive or OneDrive, the easiest way is to save this in the website called Netlify. How it works is that you save the HTML code in Netlify, and you share the link with others. This means that whoever you're intending to share it with, they don't have to be in your same team or have Google account or Microsoft account with you. So I'll briefly go over how to do this. So here's Netlify. I'll also put it in the description below. It's free to sign up. This is my account, and I have a project called UG Weekly Sales Report. Once you create the report and open up the projects page, you'll see an area where you can drop the HTML code. On my screen, I see it right over here. So once your scheduled task generates the report and gives you the option to save it in the HTML code, save that to your computer and drag it and drop it in this area. If you ever need to reload your HTML code, there's no delete button here, so feel free to just put the updated version of it in the same location. Once it's there, you can click the link right over here. And here I can see my report on the browser. So this is the link that you want to share with your teammates or with external people. There's actually a way to push the HTML code to Netlify automatically from Claude app. However, there seems to be a known bug when it pushes to your Netlify, especially if you have a free account. Even if you have enough credits, Claude will tell you it doesn't have access to push it and gives you a 403 error, meaning that you're not allowed to do it for whatever reason. And this is likely because it misunderstands the amount of credit that you have and thinks you don't have enough and fails to push it. Once this bug is resolved, I can post a new video about this. If this is something that you're interested in, leave a comment below. Now go set this up and impress your boss or your teammates with your amazing report. If this video helped you, please leave it a like and subscribe to my channel for more useful videos. And if you have any questions or feedback, leave it in the comment below, and I'll see you in my next video. Thanks.